June 17th, 2014. For those that have not been to a meeting before, the way things work here is once we're through with the roll and going over the minutes, city staff will present on an individual item. Once they're done with their presentation, the commission will have an opportunity to ask technical questions. Once the technical questions are done, then we open it up to the public for comment. If you have something to say, we ask that you step up to the microphone over there, state your name and your address so we have it for the minutes, and please try to keep your comments as germane to the topic as possible, and we may ask a question or two. Once everybody who wants the opportunity has had the opportunity to speak, we close public commentary, bring it back to the commission for discussion and usually a vote. With that, let's call the roll.
David Borsak.
Present.
Ed Bowen.
Here.
Jeffrey Tomes.
Here.
Thomas Freitag.
Here.
John Hintz. Steve Cummings.
Here.
Kathleen Propp. Donna Laurie.
Here.
Robert Weigert.
Here.
Carl Nollenberger.
I would also ask if you have a cell phone to please silence it or turn it off so it doesn't ring during the meeting. And approval of the minutes from June 3rd. Do we have any additions, corrections, deletions, et cetera?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion clearly passes. Let's move on to item 1. Release water main and sanitary sewer easements for property on the east side of the 2300 block of Wisconsin Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are welcome.
The Department of Public Works is requesting the release of 2 overlapping easements along the 2300 block of Wisconsin Street. One easement is a water main easement and the other being a sanitary sewer easement. Back in 1984, the Fox Hollow Estate condominiums were built at the northeast corner of West Smith Avenue, Wisconsin Street, which consists of 40 condominium units broken down by 4 4-unit complexes and 3 8-unit complexes. At the time of the complex's construction, the city accepted water main and sanitary sewer easement for construction of pipes leading into the property, which solely serve the complex, nothing else. As a result, the city is responsible for continued maintenance and upkeep of the existing mains in the area. Recently, it was discovered that the water connections to the public main were not or are not currently up to the city standards. So as a result, the city was going to look into excavating and updating or correcting the faulty connections or not substandard connections. Prior to going in there, the water utility discovered that there's several mature trees that are growing inside the easement, which was against the easement agreement. So the engineering division proposed 2 options to the association. First being that the association could pay to have all the trees removed within the easement area and to allow the utility to get in there and do the upgrades to the connections. The other option was to have the association release the easements, therefore conveying all the utilities and associated structures within the easement to the condo association, where the city would no longer be owner of the utilities. The association met and decided to go with the release of the easements. So as a result of that, the current connections do meet the minimum standards for a private utility connection, so no upgrades would be needed at this time to the water services. And as a result, the city would no longer be responsible for the continued maintenance of the mains within there. The Department of Public Works is working with the association and owners to release the easements, and staff is in support of the release as it doesn't force the condo to pay for the removal of the trees and losing the benefits of those trees. And the other benefit that is that the city is no longer responsible for the sanitary sewer and water main. So staff is requesting approval of the release of the easements as requested.
Okay, technical questions from the commission. Jeff?
Yeah, somebody's got to do some explaining on if the connection is substandard to connect to the public main. I assume these are still going to be connected to the public main. So why are they, because they're private, okay to connect to the public main, but they aren't if the public.
Apparently, Mr.
Makes no
Cody was
sense.
ready for this question.
Yeah, apparently you
I'll
are.
field this one.
That makes like no sense.
Thank you, Jeff, for flipping back to that. Essentially what happened is the large diameter main that serves the development comes off of Wisconsin Street and goes east to a hydrant. The individual laterals that are connected to that main that serve the individual buildings were tapped off of that correctly, but there were no shutoffs put within the easement lines to turn off the laterals to those buildings. So essentially what happens is the city has no way to go in and turn off the services to the individual buildings in the event that they would have a leak on one of those lines. They're outside the easement, they're outside the area that the city can go in and have jurisdiction over. With that said, all we can do then is basically leave the water run or shut off all the condominiums in the entire complex with the master valve that is out in the street on the line. So that's where it's not a materials issue, it's simply a location of where the shut-off locations were. That's why our water utility was simply going to go in, install the shut-offs at the correct location, get everything coordinated so that we could notify everyone. We'd have to do a mass shut-off of this main, get the connections, shut-offs, individual shut-offs put in at the correct locations, and then re-energize the main and all the laterals.
All right, so as I understand, if we have a problem with our main, we can shut our main off. In
In the easement, yes.
In our easement. If then the problem is resulting from on their property forward, then that's their problem if it causes any kind of flooding due to a pipe problem on the easement from this point forward if we approve this.
Correct. They will basically be responsible for everything from where the main valve is that's out near the street. Shortly off the main, there's a larger diameter main that would turn off what was the section of public main, so that the shut-off is what determines the ownership change. The city is required by PSC rules to own until they can shut off the water supply to the property.
Is there an agreement in place that provides for indemnifying the city for anything that would occur that occurs on their property under that easement?
Only if there's language in the easement to that, and I don't recall.
That's something that we should consider? Yeah, I mean, that they retain, I mean, the association's doing this, saying it's, that they're accepting the responsibility. We should have something that indemnifies the city for that responsibility if we're going to vacate that easement. And it becomes then the sole responsibility of that condominium association, that we need to get the city out of that liability issue.
I think we can have that research before it goes up to the Common Council.
Okay.
This would be no different than
Any
any
other
other
apartment building.
development that has this situation where they have a larger diameter main entering, or even any house where it has a water lateral that enters the house. Once we have the shut-off, if it's no longer a public main, we're no longer responsible for that portion of it.
David had a comment question.
Yeah, I thought the question Jeff might have been asking initially was, when this was originally installed, why weren't there individual shut-off valves to each facility, or was there a different standard?
The individual shut-offs were put on the lines, however, they are not within the easement, so the city has access to them to turn it off. They're very close to the building.
Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, back to, now we're open up for public commentary. Anybody else have a comment about this particular item? Please step up and tell us what you think.
Bob Cornell, 548 West Smith. My wife and I bought our condo there in 1983. In those 30 years, I've been a member of the board, and I was president of the board for 18 years. I'm not speaking in defense of for the thing you're going to consider. I think it's a good idea relative to condominium association's financial situation. The thing that bothers me, and I hope I can get a couple answers tonight so it'll rest my mind, is back in I'll give you a little history. Back in 1982, the developer started a project, and there was one building on the south side, and all the west side was completed. Then in 1983, they finished the north side, the east side, and the northeast corner with a single building. Now, I'm assuming, and I hope this is where staff can help me out, I'm assuming that because it was developed and the city was obviously part of the development before they would approve the plans, that the developer had to know the easement and the conditions of the easement. Now, the association was yet not an association because it hadn't been turned over to the owners. So the trees were planted by the developer, unknown to anybody in the association. I've been there from the start, and I was surprised when I saw this item, considering the easement. So my concern is if today the same thing would happen, and I realize the people on the staff haven't probably been here 30 years ago, but I'd like to be naive enough that some of these things never change. So could staff answer that is, would the original developer have to know of that easement before they could proceed?
Or I would assume that easement was needed as part of that development.
Right.
So they would have been working with the city on the easement and all the particulars about the easement. So I would assume, my assumption was, if that developer was working with us on the easement, they would know all the requirements of that easement. That's just my assumption.
Right.
I haven't been here for 30 years, so I don't know who developed
I
it.
understand. But if that would happen today, you would, as part of the planning services, would make sure that the developer knew that that was the situation?
Typically, or the Department of Public Works will certainly
Okay.
make them aware of any easement requirement. Let's see, it's even better. The developer signed the easement, so there was knowledge of it. And, this is not uncommon. A lot of these easements, over time, things get built in those easements or across those easements, and, you're not required to get a building permit to put up a tree, so those things don't get caught They just get caught in these instances.
The second question is, if you look at that easement on the far east end, there is a fire hydrant that obviously, because it was in the easement, was maintained by the city, and if I read Mr. Godey's report right, the maintenance of that fire hydrant will now be in the care of the condo association? Now, having said that, what happens in the case when the fire hydrants are opened up and reflushed and so forth and so on? Is that still part of the city program, or is that the responsibility of the association?
As that will no longer be a city main nor city hydrant, the city would not flush that line beyond this point. If the condo association wanted to go through and do that type of maintenance on it, they could look into hiring a private contractor to do it with the proper notification and approval from the water utility, or they may be able to hire the water utility to do it. I'm not sure which is the approved method off the top of my head.
Good, thank you. Okay, that pretty much takes care of my questions. I am just hoping this passes because I don't feel I'm in a position to pay a very high assessment for all that tree removal because I have seen the numbers, and to me they're very excessive. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cornell. Anybody else here from the public to speak to this item today? Going once? Twice? Okay, public commentary is closed. Back to the commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, the only thing, I'm okay with the way it's written, Darren and Jeff. I just ask you to look at that easement, and I know that's maybe not what we've always done in the past, but we need to rethink some of the things we've done in the past and take a look at that to make sure that the city's protected in case there is an issue. I mean, if they don't maintain that fire hydrant and there's, God forbid, a fire over there and it doesn't work properly, I don't want the city to be caught in any situation for something like that. So,
Can Steve just comment real quick on that, and then we'll...
If you can flip back to the aerial photo again for me, please, Jeff. Given the location of that hydrant And the fact that it's surrounded on two sides by that, I would be very surprised if the fire department would try to use that hydrant back there to connect to. It is probably put in as a flushing mechanism to flush a dead-end line.
I can answer that, too. The fire department would not use that hydrant unless it was absolutely necessary, because they've got them on the streets close enough around that they would not have to go in there.
Other comments, questions? All right, let's take a vote.
Weigert,
Aye.
Nolenberger,
Aye.
Forsyth,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Helms,
Aye.
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop. Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
All right, let's move on to item number 2, residential design standards variance request to permit a partial window closure at 2339 Ashland Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right. The applicant, Terrell Westner, is requesting approval, as was stated, for a variance from the City of Oshkosh's residential design standards to permit a partial window closure at 2339 Ashland Street. The subject property is approximately 10,000 square feet located between Libby Avenue and East Smith Avenue. The parcel contains a 1.5-story single-family Cape Cod home, which was constructed in 1940 according to the city assessor's data. The abutting properties are predominantly single-family. There are a few residential infill lots to the west of the subject site. And the subject property is currently zoned R1 Single Family Residence District. The city's residential design standards currently require existing window openings to be maintained and not filled or closed. The applicant is proposing to remove the existing 44 by 26-inch window located on the side elevation, which you can see on the screen, and replace it with a 32 by 26-inch window. The design standards do allow for a 10% variation in size. However, as proposed, the replacement would be approximately a 28% reduction in size. The petitioner has indicated that the primary reason and need for the partial window closure is to accommodate new cabinets in the dining room that are intended to be installed below the window. But based on the existing window height, it currently conflicts with the proposed improvement. The applicant did replace an existing window in the kitchen, which you can see on the right of the side elevation on the screen, in 2009 for the same reason. As a result, the proposed window replacement of today's request would be symmetrical with the existing windows on the side facade of the home. Staff has evaluated the proposal and impact to the home and neighborhood and are in support of the variance request because it will be symmetrical with the existing windows on the side facade and it will not adversely affect the neighborhood character. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the variance request to permit a partial window closure with the following finding. That's it.
Okay, technical question. Okay, seeing none. Anybody here from the public to speak to this item? Okay, public commentary is closed. Back to the commission.
Move approval. Second.
Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Weigert,
Aye.
Nolenberger,
Aye.
Forsyth,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Helms,
Aye.
Hess,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Okay, let's move on to item number 3, residential design standards variance request to permit a second-story addition to the attached garage of the single-story residence located at 6 Myrna Jane Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you had mentioned, this is a second request for a variance from the design standards for a second-story addition on an attached garage on a single-story home. The subject parcel is on the south side of the city on Fond du Lac Road, actually Myrna Jane Drive, which is on Fond du Lac Road just south of Waukau. The lot itself is a corner lot, outlined here in blue. It's about 15,000 square foot lot. It contains a one-story, single-family home structure. The home is facing Fond du Lac Avenue, with the south facade being a driveway entrance. Let me go to the next one here. A driveway entrance into about a 1.5 stall to a 2-stall garage. As you can see, the area is zoned R1 single family. You have a little bit of C1 neighborhood business across Fond du Lac to the north, and some multifamily down Fond du Lac to the south. But as you can see with the light yellow color, that the entire area is predominantly a single-family neighborhood. Myrna Jane Drive itself, and I'll get to a bigger picture in a second, is a 950-foot-long dead-end street. It has 21 lots and 21 one-story ranch-style homes on it. As you know, and as you kind of just went through, in early 2014, the City Council adopted design standards with the overall purpose and intent to, and I'm just going to read this, maintain the basic architectural quality of residents within the community, minimize adverse impacts on adjacent properties and neighborhoods resulting from architectural and building construction practice that may detract from the character and appearance of the neighborhood as a whole, and to ensure compatible design. So the standards that were adopted by the council apply to all 1- and 2-family homes within the city. And the specific one that is being, variance is being requested for here is the, and I'm quoting it again, additions and changes that extend to building's height shall not be higher than the principal structure's dominant or highest roof ridge line, not overpower the principal structure's overall scale and massing. And I want to, on the second page, page 2 of your staff reports, there are 3 items, and Elizabeth in the last one had mentioned it at the end of the presentation. The Plan Commission is authorized to grant a variance from the application of the standards when one of those 3 items is determined, one or more. So the first is that the intent of the standards have been incorrectly interpreted, the standards do not apply to the particular project, or enforcement of the standards cause unnecessary hardship. So as you hear me go through the presentation and you talk amongst yourselves and you make your decision, those are the findings that you're going to have to find. It's kind of more of almost a Board of Appeals type action. That's your findings are different than theirs, obviously, but you do have to find those findings. So with that, again, the house is about 1,650 square feet. It is a one-story ranch. It has about a 600 square foot attached garage. The house itself is approximately 13 to 15 feet tall. And it doesn't come out very well here, but you can kind of see this is the primary house. The garage is here on the south side. This is a view from the south side. So you have the garage door, and it looks like there's maybe a finished portion of the garage. I couldn't really tell from the street, but there's a door and a couple windows and the garage door. So this is the side, the view from Myrna Jane. This is the view from Fond du Lac. The variance that is being requested again is to put a second-story addition on this portion of the home above the garage. It would be the same footprint as the garage, but it would raise up one story to an overall height of about 24.5 feet. So it would be increasing the height of the garage portion of the house approximately 11.5 feet. That necessitates the requiring the variance because extending over that roof line. In their application, the petitioners indicated that the primary reason that the second story is needed on the home is primarily the way the home was built originally. They need extra storage space, and you have their application in there. The house was built on a crawl space, basically utility accessory crawl space, so there's no storage underneath the building. As you can see, the slope of the roof is very, very slight. It does not leave any attic space for storage as well. So that second story addition would be primarily used for storage. Staff did evaluate the variance proposal, and we looked at it really from 2 standpoints. One was the purpose and intent of the design standards as I had read them before, as they relate to preserving the architectural integrity of the structure itself. Then we also looked at it from the potential of impact on adjacent properties, neighborhood character, and what you hear a lot, the curb appeal of the street. So when we reviewed that, this is what is being proposed. This is this would be the garage from the south side. This is on the right side on the Fond du Lac side. So this is the existing house. This would be the addition, the second-story addition onto the house. This is looking at it from the left side, so it's just a flip of the two. We don't obviously have pictures of this one as designed, but this is a similar type of construction as being requested. It's for example purposes only. Obviously, the garage doors wouldn't be here. The actual design wouldn't look exactly the same. But this is a second-story garage addition on a ranch-style home. This home has a little bit of an enclosed-in breezeway that's a little bit higher as well. So when we looked at this and evaluated it from those two standpoints, we could not support the variance request for the first reason that the second-story addition, and I'll go back to the design here, was not integrated into the general design of the house itself. It has sort of a tacked-on appearance, sort of a large vertical element being added to the house. That vertical element would overpower, in our opinion, the scale and the mass of the existing structure itself, creating those sharp vertical lines, and kind of being I'll kind of go back to this, basically going to be a second-story addition on only a third of a ranch-style house. So it kind of stick out there like a tower. It does increase the height of that portion of the house, the garage portion, by about 88%. So, I mean, it's going up pretty high. So when we kind of looked at the entire neighborhood as a whole, as the second part of our evaluation, this is about 1,000 feet of Myrna Jane Drive, and you can see that it is fully developed. There's 21 homes on this block. These are all the homes. They are all single-story homes on the block. Generally, it's a ranch-style neighborhood. So we felt that addition onto the home on the corner would alter that home's appearance, kind of take it out of character with that one-story nature of the neighborhood, and definitely take it out of character and, in our opinion, detract from the neighborhood's overall ranch-style appearance. The petitioner did respond to onto our concerns. She had mentioned, or they had mentioned, that this is a corner lot. Again, this is the lot. It is facing Fond du Lac Avenue. The garage portion is set back quite a ways from the right-of-way. Wouldn't block any views. I'm going to go to the next slide here. I kind of went up Fond du Lac Road. These are the homes north of Fond du Lac Road. So you can see you have story-and-a-half homes, potentially partial two-story. And you go south on Fond du Lac Road. Now this one is facing Isaac Street, but this is a 4-unit condo, and this is the other home on Fond du Lac. If you look across Fond du Lac, there's obviously a berm here, and this is the rear of a couple homes that are on the opposite side of Fond du Lac. I'm going to go back to this one. So those are over here. Those other homes I showed you run up here and run down this way. So, again, very out of character with the homes in Myrna Jane, not as much with the ones on Fond du Lac. However, when we also looked at the site, we looked at alternatives for storage space. And one thing that we found, and it's kind of hard to see here, but in the red hashed-in areas here is where attached building additions could be done to the home in a single-story standpoint. So you have quite a bit of area around the building. Obviously, there are improvements. There's the pool and the deck in the back, but there's some area for attached single-story additions for storage. And then if there was a detached structure, which could also be climate-controlled and powered, as a detached structure, could go anywhere in this green hatched-in area. So we do feel that there is space on the lot to create additional either single-story addition or an outbuilding or accessory building for the storage needs. Petitioner did respond to that as well, stating that the alternatives that she had discussed with, or they had discussed with staff, were very cost prohibitive. Any kind of building addition onto the building would require installation of footings, possible slab. Also, there's potential for utilities to be removed or be moved. And also that the homeowner would never recapture those costs of moving the utilities or putting in the footings when the home was sold. And that's what they had indicated in their application. So in this case, staff is recommending denial of the request to permit the second-story addition to the attached garage of the single-story home on 6 Myrna Jane. And we are recommending these findings, that the proposed second-story addition will overpower the principal structure's scale and massing, that the structure's architectural design following the addition will be in contrast with the nature of the neighborhood and will detract from that single-story character, and that there are alternate means available on the lot that could achieve additional storage space that would be within code parameters if the applicant were to investigate and consider them.
Thank you. Technical questions from the commission? Anything? Okay, seeing none. Anyone here from the public to speak to this item?
Me, I'm Kimberly Gallagher-Bolerick that lives with this residence.
Okay.
This has been an ongoing, last year, I put a new garage floor in with terms of being that I could do something to bring more storage space to my home. And then we brought it to you guys here at the city at the beginning of the year, and we were waiting for some sort of response, and we were denied the permit because of being March 1st of 2014 under your code that we could not build being single stories. Now, I'm sorry, have a second story put on. But I did go down my street, and I did ask majority of my neighbors down the street if they would have a problem with me building a second story on, because it would be more price-wise. I can build up, and I can keep my square footage and go up, and if I would have to put footings out this way, that would be more money for me to spend to have that done, and that's why I had my garage done last year. So this year I could build something up of a variance to have more storage space. Plus, I wanted to bring my mother's stuff home. My mom died in 2007, and my stuff has been sitting in storage since 2007. I pay about $900 a year for storage that does not have climate control. And I don't know what's good yet and what's not good. Understanding I live on a crawl space, I was just trying to find ways that I could build space where I could have space to bring my mother's stuff home, plus have more space without building out and making it look odd. I did, like I said, go down the street and ask my neighbors. They have no problem with it. I asked the Smiths across the street and the people that live behind me if they would have a problem with it, and they have no problem whatsoever with it, what I want to do. It would be done look nice. I mean, there can be adjustments with the height. What you're seeing right there, yeah, it does look taller than the house, but on the side where the lower part of the house, there would be windows, and we could place windows in other ways. This is just a picture of an idea of what we wanted to do. And if I would have known that this new code was going to go into place of this year, I would have did this last year, because there wouldn't have been a problem last year for me doing this. All the houses on Myrna Jane have their house and their garage side by side. The only thing, like you explained, is that my garage faces Myrna Jane and my house faces Fond du Lac Road. I did look at your recommendations of building out from my garage, and still I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because it doesn't matter if I build out or if I go up, it's going to look silly. So if you have a recommendation, if you deny my permit, if you have a recommendation, I would like if someone could come to my house and show me what can be done without, looking at the Google map, and you weren't in my backyard to see that we have a lot of mature trees on my property that would probably have to be cut down, and the rooting system, because they've been there for years, that go into the ground by the garage, and I didn't want to disrupt the trees also. So I am asking that you permit me to, with adjustments to be made, that I could put a second story on versus going outward, and I would make it look nice, that it wouldn't look like an eyesore on the street of Myrna Jane. And I do have signatures from the people that I did ask on the street. If they opposed to it, then they didn't sign it, but nobody had opposed to the situation. There are 4 to 5 houses on the street that have basements. The rest of them have crawl spaces. Some of the houses made more room for attic space through the years, and there's maybe one other house on the street that has a situation where the garage faces different from the house, where it's not side by side. But I did do my homework into all of this. I'm aware that I have a storage shed in the backyard for space, and I'm aware of that, and that is part of the square footage of the garage also that has to be included, even if I went out one way of the garage in the back part where there's a mature tree, and then in the front. I'm aware of that, but I have to include that in my square footage of the storage unit that I have in the back. It will go along with it. And the reason that I did, like I'm repeating myself, but the reason why I did put the new garage flooring in was that I could this year go and make something standard, that I could go and make a variance and have like a second storage area on top for attic space, that I could bring, one, my mother's stuff home where I didn't have to pay for storage fees anymore, and two, to have more space.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak to this item? Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I just ask the applicant a question? One question quick. Did I hear that you were open, the design that you had submitted to planning services, that was just a kind of a concept design? So
Yeah.
you're kind of open to some suggestions potentially for some reasonable architectural enhancements potentially?
Right.
Okay.
But I just wanted an area that I don't want my mother's stuff sitting in a climate-controlled area in a different part of my house where I can go out and sit out in a storage unit and look at it. That's not the point. I want to bring my mother's stuff home. I am an only child, and my mom's stuff sits in a storage unit because I don't have the space.
Okay.
And now that I'm taking the time. So I am open. My husband drew a picture I brought it in, which would look a little different, where that one looks like it would be on this eyesore, but he made it more of the standards of where this is what it would look like. And yes, we can move windows around, and I want to put windows on the other side. Like I said, we have a lot of mature trees on our property, which you wouldn't see this. It would not be an obstruction to the people across the street, and it would not be an obstruction to the people that live behind me where my pool area is. And the people over the berm that I believe live on Victoria that you sent this to, they live over the berm, and they have trees that they wouldn't even see this that being an obstruction, and it would be all the way straight down the line. When you look down the street, they all match with the rest. So that's it. And yes, am I open to architectural? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak to this item? Oh, Kathy's got a question for you, too. Sorry, I'm sorry.
I drove out there to look, and your house is unusually, I'm going to call it short. You know, there's almost no attic.
Right.
It's roof lines, you know, normally are like this, and in your neighborhood there are some like that, but it's almost flat. So that's one reason that I think the staff might have suggested that this is too great a contrast, you know, and perhaps maybe there's a way that you could build up your existing house and not make the garage part so large.
But
I'm not an architect, and I clearly don't know it, but I think that's my sense of what the problem is.
see, but I don't know structurally, because when it was built, I don't know if you built up on top of my house or out. I don't know if that would hold it. I built, you know, on top of my roof, and where am I
Well,
supposed
you'd
to?
have to have somebody evaluate it.
Right, but I don't think structurally, sound-wise, it would be able to hold a second story, that's where I had the flooring done, and I let it sit for the winter to see if it, you know.
Okay. David and Steve?
Yeah, my question to the homeowner is, and if I hear that there may be some flexibility, certainly we're not going to be able to design something on the back of a napkin here tonight.
No.
And would it be, you know, at this stage, even to say, lay it over for a month and
Come up
have,
with some alternatives?
I'm sorry?
And come up with some alternatives?
Come up with some alternatives, either in discussion with staff or you with either an architect or a contractor, and come back with a revised proposal, and then we could address it probably fully and fairly.
Is it possible that someone could come out to the house and look at without looking on a Google
Yes.
map?
Yes.
You're not understanding. People that come there will understand what I'm trying to say, but just looking at the map, you know, you're not going to show all the mature trees, and I would like to build on, but if someone could come, please, that
Yes,
would
we will.
be greatly appreciated.
And I do think you made a good case in terms of the limitations of the house. I think we got that. I think it's more a question of what would work here. So if,
So-
David's got an excellent suggestion.
Okay.
Steve?
Yeah. Will this, are you considering this livable space? In other words, you'll have electric heat up there?
No, it's just more space for, no one's going to live up there. And I don't have livable space where you said there was a door to go in. Yes, at one time there was a breezeway where you see the door where you walk in and all those windows where you sit next to the
right.
garage.
Yep.
There's no livable space. There used to be a breezeway there.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. I
Well, I
just
meant-
looked from the street.
And
so-
no, there
The
will not be
addition,
livable, no.
You're not going to have electric up there, you're not going to have.
Well, I'm going to have lights and stuff like that, yes. There will have to be, you know, electricity for lights up there, yes. I can go up there.
You're running heat up there as well?
No, I just want it to be insulated correctly, so, you know,
Used for storage.
yes, that's what I'm looking for storage.
Jeff?
I agree with David on this. I don't know enough of this because I would have asked questions as to, since her roof line, to what Kathy was pointing out, was so low relative to other houses, what's the height of that house? So if that house is 13 feet, but other people's one-story houses are 17, 18 feet, then going up to 22, it's not that big a difference. I mean, I can have a 10, 12-pitch house, and it's going to look like a two-story house. So I would like to know relative to other houses, how different that is. So that would be one of the questions I would ask. And then, like I said, if something can be done to minimize that difference, and then being that this is on a quarter and there's other houses that are pretty close in proximity to what David was pointing out, that are close in terms that are taller. I'd like to know that too before we render a decision and say yes or no.
Well, and it would also be good because we could work with alternatives, possibly stepping it. So it's a gradual, it's not a sharp vertical change.
Who steps it?
Step it down.
Trying to say.
There are options that,
Do we have any more questions for the petitioner, or can we finally let her sit down? All right, have a seat.
Thank you.
Let's continue. If people have some insights into this, anybody else here from the public to speak to this item today? Okay, that's it. Back to the commission. David.
Let's just tee it up. Say, I'd like to make a motion that we lay this over for 30 days, or 2 meetings, and that during that time, that in consultation with staff and the homeowner and perhaps other parties to see if we can find a workable solution.
Which July meeting is that? That's July...
July 1st is the.
Next one, so it's July
15th.
15th, yeah. July 15th meeting you're talking,
To
right?
the July 15th.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Weigert,
Aye.
Wallenberger,
Aye.
Horsack,
Aye.
Coleman,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Hens,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Pop. Aye. Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
All right, great. There's hope. Moving on to item number 4, public hearing on proposed creation of tax increment financing district number 27 North Main Street Industrial Park, designation of boundaries, and approval of project plan.
All right, first off, do we have handouts?
oh, yes.
Above and beyond what we've
For all
already.
of you who might have missed it in the project plan, we forgot 2 tables.
There were 2 tables that would go after
Yes,
page
I was wondering where those tables were.
3, 4.
So
Five
David's going to
going
hand
down
those
that
out right now. And what the tables are, they're the increment tables. Over time, they'll show the things. Really, what we're talking about tonight and what we've always talked about with TIF is the
Have a
land
couple
use
extra.
proposal. This is the increment table. It shows you what works, what we're anticipating to generate. But what this is a proposal on the creation of tax increment financing district number 27, the North Main Street Industrial Park, designation of boundaries and approval of the project plan. Basically, what we're proposing to do is to create this TIF in this area. This is up on the North Street. That covers the majority of the old North Industrial Park, which was TID number 2. And the TIF is being created for 2 reasons. First reason is to install some public improvements, regional stormwater improvements in the area that's going to help facilitate future development and expansion in this district. And I'll get to that in a little bit. And the second one is to help facilitate a $25 million expansion and job retention project with the Bemis Perfect Seal development. They are proposing a $25 million expansion in the community that will retain 160 jobs in the community, or retain 161 jobs in the community, and create about another 160 over the next 3 to 5 years. So this is the proposed boundaries of the district. These are the proposed public improvements, these regional detention basins, and the reason why we're proposing to do some of those regional detention basins, and I'll pop back to this one. You kind of see, and this doesn't even show. This doesn't show the entire land use scenario or the development scenario. But when these sites were developed, there was no real stormwater requirements. So what you won't, there's very intensely developed land in this district. So there's not, if a lot of these buildings and areas want to expand, they're constrained right now because for future stormwater improvements, because they don't really have a lot of land to provide those retention requirements. So what we're proposing to do is build these regional stormwater detention facilities that these businesses could then they could expand and add into these areas. And that is, we'll get to that in a minute. So here's here's the land use picture. So you can see everything in gray is manufacturing. The red is commercial land use. Green is agricultural. So it's in an area that is manufacturing based. This is just showing the existing and proposed zoning. We're not proposing any zone changes as part of this process. And this shows a highlight, kind of what this red line is. It shows where the old TIF number 2 was. So again, we're going over an old TIF district that helped actually promote development in this area. Promoted development, but at the time when this original tax incremental district industrial park was formed, we didn't have those stormwater requirements that we have nowadays. This is the estimate and timing of project costs. It's about an $8 million total project cost. About $4 million, almost $5 million of TID costs related to that public improvements. Including the stormwater utilities and that kind of stuff, and then we'll put the other major cost is that PAYGO. The city, when it moves forward with some of these private developments, we prefer to work with a PAYGO versus putting a development assistant grant, because the PAYGO puts all the impetus on the applicant to create the value in order for us to make that payment to them. So we would propose to make payments to Bemis over the next 10 years to the tune of about $2 million. The increment tables that you have that we passed out show that the project is feasible based on the value that's anticipated to come in from this project. And we're hoping that we capture some additional value in the district as inflation occurs in the area or other developments come online. So that's the short overview. David?
Did you want to explain the general principles of TIF for anybody that's watching TV or neighbors?
No, we don't typically go into that discussion at this level.
So for this item, do we need technical questions, or as a public hearing, what would you prefer here?
We can go to technical questions and open up a public hearing.
Okay. Technical questions, Kathy.
I noticed that the detention basins were toward the south, which is likely where there's available land out there. But the flow in the district would allow drainage from the north to the south then, or we aren't assisting
Yep.
The
You
new,
can see we're also installing storm sewer, additional storm sewer, so anybody would be building and expanding, they could tap into the storm sewer. Yes, that would feed into these areas. So we were,
okay, but then there's no need or no room for a detention basin up on the, must be the Bemis property.
oh, I'm sorry, that's a good question. The Bemis property would be in here. Right?
Why did I think it
Those three.
was up to the north?
This one, this is
that
this is Packer property. This one is actually just being annexed into the city.
Okay, well, is there any need or room on the Packer property for a detention basin?
I'll let Steve discuss that.
These basins are being set up as regional detention basins versus single-site detention basins, so that the general lay of the land for flow of the stormwater drainage is from north to south. So we're extending the storm sewer to the north, collect that water, get it to these regional basins, and treat it and do flood control in the regional basins at the south end, where we can accumulate more water and have less basins and a better effect on the pollutants and the flood control. There is not a need to have one up there, but yes, these basins will serve those properties at the north end.
And just let me add in. Steve raised an excellent point that I missed. Routinely, when we're developing new industrial parks and business parks, we incorporate regional stormwater facilities into those parks. When these were developed, of course, we didn't incorporate them in. So now we're trying to retrofit. Dave, I don't know, Steve, you might want us to hang out up there.
Ed, David, and then Jeff. All right, first.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding what I'm looking at, but when we say regional detention basins, are these basins going to eliminate the need of people who are developing undeveloped property or expanding on site? Are these going to be accepting private runoff and alleviating the need for those to be constructed on individual sites, or are these just sort of collection pieces for the existing stormwater system?
These are being designed basically to be similar to what we would have in a new industrial park, where they will accommodate up to the sites to have up to, typically in our other developments, and we haven't gotten to the detailed design here, so please don't hold me to these numbers, but our typical standard would be conceptually that each of the lots would be able to develop to be 70% impervious. And so they can build up to that point. If they wanted to go beyond that 70% impervious, they would have to provide on-site for going above that. That's typically very difficult to do with setbacks and everything else.
Which would be in excess of a site that didn't have the benefit of these regional basins.
Correct. Now, any of the properties that are, there's a couple properties that aren't in the basin, you notice, or in the TIF. The TIF kind of goes around some parcels that are still town parcels that are not going to be included. Those parcels would be required to do on-site stormwater management to meet the codes when they develop. The ones inside the TIF will have them sized appropriately so that when they go to reconstruct their parking lots, they do not have to provide pollution control and TSS. They'll be handled by the regional wet ponds. If they want to do an expansion of impervious area up to the threshold amount that we come up with for the district, they'll be allowed to expand up to that threshold of the property and not have to provide on-site detention.
Okay. That's kind of what I assumed. I just wasn't totally.
David and then Jeff.
Well, and if I remember correctly, and help me, Steve, that when either Packer or whoever is south of them, it was at Center Core, what was known as Center Core, when they had to expand, that there were all kinds of movement around of easements and things like that, so they could install some detention facilities to serve those constructed.
I believe it's Packer, and it might be the parcel to the south. I think it might be Great Northern. They have I believe Packer built a little farther north, Darren, a little north, just north, a little to the right there, the detention basin, just underneath that.
South, right there.
Right there. Right there. That detention basin was built by Packer on the adjacent property owner's property with an easement to meet the stormwater management at that point in time. So yes, there has been some cooperative efforts by the people in that area to try to meet the stormwater management at this point.
Yeah, and the point being that there was a lot of stuff that was going on that really made it difficult for companies if they wanted to expand in this area. So this really allows them to use their property to a much greater extent.
Jeff?
This is my job to ask the hard questions now. First of all, the payback on the facility, is that all largely due to the Bemis expansion going to pay this back? Or, because, I mean, these numbers are nice and dandy, but they only work if we get the increment. Is it really based on the fact that Bemis is putting in the $25 million that's really going to pay this back over the next 20 years?
That's where the lion's share of the increment that's being generated within the district is what we're estimating right now. I think we put an inflation number just overall of about 1%, but the majority of the payback it would be coming through.
So
this.
the payback on the $8 million is based largely because of the Bemis.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Second issue is, and you brought this point up, when we developed this without these water retention ideas in mind. When we do this on the new parks, when we develop that, where it's a TIF, that goes into the property values that we charge the people. What are these guys paying? It doesn't look like to me anybody that's in that industrial park is going to be paying for any of this, whereas when we put in retention facilities through the water utility, everybody's water bill goes up, and we pay for it. But the people in this industrial park, the businesses, are paying for none of this, and they're getting the benefit of it because we're capturing water. And so I don't quite understand why we're using TIF and putting in bonds, which is going to increase the debt of the city, right? Which the Common Council wants us to reduce, but we're going to put it in to increase it, to do something to where we already have an industrial park on the west side that already has us all developed in, and it doesn't seem a wise use of our money. So I'm struggling here with, I don't mind the Bemis issue, I understand that one, okay? But the additional, where are we using TIF, putting in more debt that the taxpayers have to pay for, but the large beneficiary are the industrial places that are there. They're not footing any of the bill. And that's what I'm really struggling with on this particular project.
Mr. Davis, do you have a response to?
Yes, if I could.
Oh, yeah, and then Donna?
The project includes both the stormwater utility and TIF because the general beneficiaries of the stormwater ponds includes not only the TIF district but the whole watershed. So we've actually separated the watershed and the TIF beneficiaries as much as we could at this point. And the TIF beneficiaries within the district are still paying their stormwater utility bills, but we're going to give them the same opportunity to develop more value in that district that they can't develop right now because of the stormwater requirements. In the Southwest Industrial Park, we've already accommodated that development so that we can maximize the land value in that Southwest TIF. The North TIF, we can't maximize the value because based on the stormwater requirements, they can't physically fit everything on the property in any kind of economically feasible sense. So we think we're actually going to get more value per acre because we're concentrating the stormwater off-site and allowing the manufacturing or office space to be maximized to get the most value out of the district.
But, Mr. Davis, other than Bemis, is there anybody over there that said they have a project that they're going to put in, if we solve this water problem, that'll increase the incremental value to make this TIF pay off?
There is open space. I can't say one way or the other whether business ABC is going to expand, but we've now given them the opportunity to be able to do that and made it more likely that would happen. Certainly there's open space that I think in the next 20 years will be built on with some kind of structure, but we're not basing the TIF on those developments. I think the only way that shows up is in the 1% inflationary growth. I mean, we could project doubling some of the building sizes or occupying all the vacant space over the next 20 years, but that's pure speculation on our part. In fact, the number could be much larger than what we're even proposing when it comes to the value increase.
And then in other areas of the city that have similar issues that were built way back when, that don't have the ability to expand because their footprint has a problem with water utility, are we going to then create TIFs for them? Or are we going to isolate it and said, we'll take care of this people, but we may not take care of this one over here?
Well, keep in mind, we're still doing stormwater detention ponds throughout the city, and we don't assess them specifically. It's all part of the stormwater utility bills that everybody in the city pays. So they're not going to go up or down compared to the people in the North Industrial Park. They're still going to pay the same stormwater utility rates whether this goes in or not.
Donna, and then David, and then Carl.
Jeff raises questions that I have concern with also. Will you please refresh me as to where Bemis is planning to go in on the map, please?
Sure. It's actually in the TIF plan. They're not page numbered because it is a draft, but in the application section, which is appendix, I believe appendix B, you'll see this map. And that shows the additions where we're looking. Basically, these properties right here, there'd be an expansion connecting these two parcels together and these two buildings together.
Which map number is it again?
Well, it doesn't have a number on it. It's a warehouse expansion project. So you see the two buildings are shown on that plan. They're right here on the map. And then the expansion basically fills in the gap in between and covers a whole bunch of the area to the east.
So they will be off.
And then there's parking lot expansion.
Main Street?
Yes,
So they'll be off Main Street.
off Main Street, correct. Yeah, there's two facilities there right now. They would be connecting those two facilities together with a little over 100,000 square foot expansion.
Thank you.
Doubling, well, more than doubling.
David,
their
Carl,
size.
and then back to Jeff again.
You know, as a matter of background, this is something consistent to what we do. What's different in the Southwest Industrial Park, second edition, if you will, is that was raw land. And then we put in infrastructure on the come, if you will, to make that land developable. We put streets, we put utilities. In the newer facilities, we put stormwater detention ponds, which we didn't have to address. When we developed this 40 and 50 years ago, that was all farmland. We didn't have to deal with that. But we put in Main Street, we put in Mosier, we set aside property for the water tower. So those are the kind of infrastructures that we wanted to put in so that this property could be developed. And this is certainly the second iteration of this, of the development of the North Industrial Park.
Carl and Jeff.
One basic question. If these developments were not done, would the Bemis project move forward?
If we don't adopt the TIF, they've told us that their preference would be not in Oshkosh. And the alternative they gave us was Monterrey, Mexico.
So it meets the but-for test for tax increment financing?
Yes.
In your estimation?
Yes.
That's the crucial question. So.
Jeff.
I guess what I'd like to expand on what Carl just said, because I didn't hear what I thought he asked. What I'd say is, if the storm detention portion of this TIF was not done, and we did the Bemis Pago, would Bemis still expand?
Approve one and not the other. I didn't understand that part of the question.
But yeah, all I'm saying is if we did not have the detention piece of it, and we just had the TIF district for the Bemis Pago, would Bemis still not do the project because we don't do the water retention issue? Or are they only concerned about getting their $2 million pay-go?
They need both to make it work in Oshkosh because they have to comply with the stormwater ordinance as it is right now unless we provide the off-site improvements. So they'd lose part of their building or parking or have to somehow retrofit a much bigger stormwater management pond on their property rather than on the city's property. So that expense and that eating into their site plan, making it difficult to expand in the future, if not impossible to expand in the future, I think it was a critical piece to Perfect Seal saying this is the choice they want to make. They want to go with Oshkosh. I think we are on the hook to put in the stormwater management facility as part of the package. Both of the pieces were outlined in their application that they needed both. And I just don't see how they'd be able to meet all the requirements on their own parcel at this point in time for what they're proposing now, plus 2 other expansions they have on the plan.
See, that makes the case for it, in my mind. It's the traditional but-for test relating to tax increment financing. And he's saying that but-for this project in this tax increment district,
And it's
we're
both
going to lose
pieces.
that development. And we cannot afford to lose that development.
The thing is, Carl, is I see one proposal. That's it. What I don't see is whether that particular pond over here on the next to the Bemis property handles that issue or not. If it does, why are we spending $8 million to do the rest for something that's been there longer than I've been alive? That's my problem, okay? And that's more of a common council issue, and I understand that, okay? But unless we have that particular discussion.
It's a common council issue.
No, it is a common council issue, I get that. But unless we have that discussion, I mean,
All right, David.
just
I
going to
don't
keep.
know, I think that we're overanalyzing, and I appreciate the finance and all that other stuff, but this is consistent, additionally, it's consistent with our comprehensive plan. One of the critical things is to increase tax base, but also to increase jobs and also environment. I mean, it all wraps together, and I'm just a little confused of, sort of the pushback. I understand that we question it, but this is not only the long-term benefit, is it benefits every company in there that wants to be able to expand.
Stephen, I think we got to wrap this up soon so public can
It's also very much a part of economic development, which we're focusing on very, very heavily. And again, economic development is industrial development, and this fits with helping our existing manufacturers expand and grow, so.
And retention of the existing businesses that are already there.
Yes.
Perfect Seal's kind of a test case or a microcosm of what's going to be happening with other businesses in that park, and we wanted to alleviate or create the conditions so that they would be able to take advantage of a regional pond and not have to deal with it on each individual parcel, because in the long run, the large regional ponds function much better, I'm told, when it comes to flood control and water quality. And then again, it's going to be owned by the city, so it'll be maintained in perpetuity.
Okay.
So from my perspective, it wins on an economic perspective and an environmental perspective.
All right, let's move on. Anybody here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir, state your name and address, and tell us what you think.
Opening the public hearing.
Yep.
My name's Doug Kleinschmidt, 886 Old Knapp Street Road, and one of the retentions is on my father's property. Can I approach to show kind of what?
Yeah, come on up.
A lot of what you said, I don't think you're understanding. Originally, like you said, back in the 1970s, this is the pond I'm talking about. We had open drainage here and here. And it went through here, and I understand we've got properties that put down asphalt and made more runoff problems, but what they did is they covered over all those ditches, and they have little storm sewers. So you've got a huge ditch, that's the problem right here, you have a huge ditch dumping into a little sewer like that. It's not going to work. The lowest spot anywhere here is right next to where Bemis is going to add on. to bring that parking lot up to the grade, I would say they're gonna have to fill that with 6 to 8 feet. That's the lowest spot since I was 10 years old. There's a huge problem right here. This road floods constantly. The point being that I don't quite understand where these properties are that they can build on. There's most of the buildings cover just about all the properties. And the point I want to say is that piece of partial property is actually in the town, and we really don't have any interest on selling it at all. And it's actually uphill from where the behemoths is, so I don't know how that storm retention is going to work for the drainage on that. It is now.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Yeah, my name's Kevin Lindsay. I'm the plant manager for Crown Cork and Seal, which is one of the plants pretty close to that retention pond he was just talking about. And you've basically answered the first question I had, was the taxes and what that was going to do to the businesses that are already there with the work you're going to be doing. And I read where it looked like bonds and different things are going to be sold. The second question I had, though, was it looked like the new storm sewer is going to go right down in front of our business. And I wanted to follow up with access to make sure when this happens, if it does happen, that we run 3 shifts, 6 and 7 days a week, and we've got to get tractor-trailer trucks in and out of there every day. So I just want to make sure that's something you're thinking about, is the access to the facilities when you're doing the stormwater upgrades, which it looks like one of them runs right down Main Street, right in front of our business.
Mr. Godey can explain that, but typically we schedule all those things so we're not closing down. Well, Steve, why don't you come?
Sir.
Reconstruction in industrial commercial area does pose challenges. Semi-access trailer is one of those. It's something we just have to work through. We try to work with the businesses, make sure we get noticed, try to get things staged in the construction contracts such that it can be done. It's challenging, it adds cost, it adds time, but we usually find a way to get around that.
David?
It's just germane to this that being involved in a street reconstruction and in a long shift operation, the city and its contractors made every effort to make access and allowed it. And I know anecdotally another company down the street that had a similar situation, and it works. It's not that part of it. It's not a hollow promise by the city. They make the access work.
Thank you. Anyone else here from the public to speak to this item today? Okay, seeing none, that's close of the public hearing. Do we need to do anything else here? All right.
Tom?
Yep, Ed.
One question.
Yep.
His comment. The street detention basin that you have labeled there on the west side of Main Street, that's purely theoretical at this point? It sounds like the land is not under control by the city. Is there a backup plan to that? I mean, it sounds like we're looking at a plan that is about 60% of the way there. And I guess we're making a lot of recommendations based on something that may or may not be. I mean, I'm assuming the answer is eminent domain if worst case scenario comes to bear. But
Worst case, we hired a consultant to do some very preliminary investigation, just to kind of get a general schematic here of this. We have just signed the contract with a consultant to go into a detailed, basically Fernald Avenue watershed-wide study to really fully analyze this and get a handle on and come up with better locations, fine-tuning those things. It's not the final design plans, it's simply doing a watershed-wide study to make sure that the basins are located where we can get the water to them. Elevationally, things look like they're going to work, and then we move to the next step of getting into the final design in eminent domain if need be to acquire the land.
I guess my only discomfort here is I take less issue with the things that Jeff is. We can debate fair treatment and corporate welfare all day long. That's a city council issue. I don't feel like that's something we need to be talking about here. But the location of where these things are going to be is very pertinent to the plan that we're looking at. And I guess I'll prove it because we need to move forward with this. But I'm a little bit uncomfortable looking at these items that aren't quite as concrete as I think they ought to be before we're approving moving forward on them.
We have a motion to approve this.
I'll even make it.
I'll second it.
And seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Jeff.
That might be.
Yeah, I'm certainly not, I don't have a problem with the Bemis issue at all in terms of giving them the pay-go. But I do agree with Ed to a certain degree that we're making a lot of assumptions under the guise of economic development, under the comprehensive plan. And part of economic development, you have to be able to pay for it too. And you have to have some reasonable idea of whether these businesses are going to expand. And to one of the gentleman's point, how are some of these businesses going to expand when they have really no land to expand on? Some of them can, I get that, okay, but some of them, they just never going to be. So I'm not going to be in support of this particular issue because I still think there's some outstanding questions and thoughts about this, to where moving on and recommending that, yes, it meets all the comprehensive plan, go ahead and put the city in debt for another $8 million, when there's still some things that really need to be thought through, is just not something that I would be in favor of doing.
Thank you. Other comments before we take a vote? Heather?
I think in concept, this is a good plan. And yes, we've got some issues with boundaries and people that are not willing to sell at this point and things like that. But we're asked to approve the boundaries of the TIF and the project plan. And I like what I see in the project plan in general, the regional facilities as well as the Bemis. And so I think we should move forward. There are going to be, it sounds like, detours, roadblocks, various things, but that's for the next step. And I think, in general, this is fine.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, let's call the roll. Take a vote.
Weigert.
Aye.
Schnellenberger.
Aye.
Forsythe.
Aye.
Bowen.
Aye.
Holmes.
No.
Hens.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Pop.
Aye?
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-1.
All right. Planning Director's report.
Item number 1, just to keep your calendars free for July 1st. After that meeting, the Plan Commission meeting, we're planning on having a combined workshop where we want to invite the RDA and the Common Council to discuss a project that we've been working on with the university's Business Success Center. We're coming up with kind of options for the Pioneer area. They went through a process where they evaluated a bunch of alternatives and came up with some scenarios, and we kind of want to go over and report as a group. So that will be that's scheduled for right now after the July 1st meeting. So we're looking forward to doing that. And item number 2, the zoning ordinance update status. David, just give us a little brief.
Oh, yeah, the zoning ordinance, pretty much, I would say a third, if not more than a third, is pretty well drafted. Comments have come back and forth. As staff level, we're going to do a few more working group meetings. Basically, the core concepts, the land use section, what's permitted, what's conditional, the bulk regulations, some of the key definitional items have been already redrafted. The next stage is going to be the landscape regulations or landscape requirements, a nonconformity in some of the process sections. That's what we're working on right now. Once we get to that stage, then we'll start looking at the map. So it's moving forward. I think we're going to have a couple staff only without the consultant working sessions, whether those are in person or via email or whatnot. But then we'll bring the consultants in when we start the next leg of it.
No, we're planning on having a stakeholder meeting without a consultant at some point within the next month or so.
We were hoping in July.
We just don't need, for some of the particulars, we don't need to drag the consultant there just to have a discussion on that. We just want to sit down in a workshop type format, go over some of those.
Right. Go over the nuts and bolts, the actual tiny pieces.
Because what the consultant did was when they were here, they introduced a lot of the general concepts, and now we want to just go fine tooth comb it.
David?
One of the things that was really helpful, and I think that we had at the last meeting that I was invited to attend, that I had a hard document to look at, and he could read it and start editing it, and the more that we can have front end to review would certainly be helpful.
Agreed.
Yeah.
When might the Plan Commission see a draft?
I think after we get through that stakeholder group,
I'm not sure. I don't know.
hopefully this fall we'll get, because we were going to break it into a couple pieces.
I would hope.
We've got a good
We would hope in
chunk.
fall you'd get a good chunk of it. Some of it, without bringing the landscaping in, some of the land use stuff gets, kind of want to bring all that to you at once. But, yeah, I would think in fall
In
or
fall.
early winter.
So we want to rely on the stakeholder group to get through, most of the fine tooth stuff, and then we'll take it to you hopefully once we're through that process, which I think we're pretty far along. Then I hope to see something hopefully in fall.
Some of the bigger topics that are yet to come up, signage is going to be a hot topic, and that's coming later. And then the mapping, of course, is going to be very.
And that will be a separate.
Very difficult.
We're looking to adopt the ordinance first, then we map second.
Right.
Anything
That's
else?
it. Nope, we're good.
It's been moved by Carl, seconded Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Apparently, nobody else.
No, they did.